Somebody just check the mic, I think.
No, like that. Like a humming noise? Is that because we have a? Oh, or is it that speaker up near their laptop?
I hear like a low.
Yeah.
I think it's the fan.
Yeah. Thanks. Ready to come to the Yes.
Sue, did anybody give you any cards? Public comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can targeted assistance to school life. Yeah, that's great. Or I just wanted to give you a heads up. Yeah, I say that. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, I'm going to copy this thing. Okay, all set?
Yeah, yeah. We're ready to go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Abington Heights School District Board meeting of Wednesday, August 16th. Would everyone please rise and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. O'Day, may we please have a roll call?
Mr. Abdullah?
Here.
Mr. Azar?
Here.
Mr. Fleming?
Here.
Mrs. Henderson? Mrs. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Medensky?
Here.
Mr. Robeson?
Here.
Mrs. Tierney?
Here.
Mr. Acker?
Here.
All present.
May I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
May we please have a motion to approve the minutes for the board meetings of July 19th and August 2nd?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Are there any board reports for this evening? Mr.
Yes, Mr. Acker, thank you. The IT committee did meet last Wednesday, and we did have a number of discussion items. One was primarily the switch, the network switch is in. It's progressing well. It should be in. Our goal is to have it before school starts. That is on track. That's been an open project for a while, so we're hoping to get that in before the kids get back to school. And also the Raptor project, that's having a safer way to have people that come into the building during school hours, to have a tracking system that's easy to use but effective, and that too is on track to be before the school year. The other thing was our long-term plan for laptops and devices for students. We had a long-range goal of 1-to-1. We're not there yet, but the committee did go through a number of possibilities. We had about 6 options. We narrowed it down to about 3, and we dove a little deeper into those 3 and looked at costs and value. So there's more to do on those 3, but the expectation is probably in a month or 2 we'll give a recommendation to the board on what we think is the best path to get to that 1-to-1 laptop device per student.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. Mr. Robeson, the Raptor project, could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Sure, that's when if let's say a vendor comes into the school to do work, they get an ID scan and a sticker or a badge so they're identified as such during the school hours. So it's quick, it's being tested right now with the administration. And so it was something that it's very valuable and it's economical to do. But with everything else going on, we never got to it. So our goal was to get it in before this school year. So that'll be a nice addition. It'll be safer for the schools. People will be well identified as who they are and what they're there for. And the big thing is, and this came up in our meeting, it's not for after-school activities. It's not for teachers. It's really for people that normally aren't in the school during school time. And that's the purpose.
That's great, thank you.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes. So there's, Mr. Abdal, thank you. So it's not just, hey, who are you? You get your ID and you get a sticker and you're in. There's some checks that go along with that, so real-time checks.
Great, sounds like a great safety initiative going in, thanks.
Mrs. Henderson?
Hello. The curriculum committee met last week. Kind of went over a footprint for what's happening this upcoming school year. Dr. Vitale ran through the professional development plan for the entire year. Every day is planned out so that the teachers know exactly what to expect, so that they're prepared for each of their professional development days. Dr. Vitale also updated us and told us that Newton, Ransom, Clark Summit, and the middle school had Title I services in the past that were for a targeted group, targeted population. Basically, the students needed parent permission to receive those services. Those 3 schools applied and were accepted. They are now school-wide Title I schools, so that a larger group of students will be able to receive services, which our hope is that students will be able to meet with greater success. The professional development library is kind of up and running. They secured funds so that teachers can read books. There was a list of books that were available to any teacher who wanted to read a book to deepen their knowledge in certain content areas. We also reviewed the strategic plan, which, as we've spoke about before, one of the goals being to improve math scores. And as you know, we passed the comprehensive guidance for comprehensive curriculum for math last year. Now we're working on science. So Dr. Vitale and Dr. Romfelker are going to be gearing that up. Dr. Vitale presented a plan where it breaks down what the science writing process is going to look like for the entire year. It goes month to month as to what we should expect when going through and taking a deeper dive in current things that are being used and looking at new programs to be implemented. So that should be done within the next school year. We are also, part of our strategic plan is to increase the sense of belonging that each of our students feels. So 2 of those targeted areas would be the PBIS, improving some of those areas, enhancing it, doing things to kind of update it, and also looking at the developmental guidance programs that are being taught K-8. I know the middle school has made some changes for this upcoming school year and have restructured how they were doing things. So now we're starting to take a deeper dive at the elementary level. Just looking at what is currently being taught in those lessons and making sure that those match the needs of our students. Looking at things, post-pandemic, the impacts of all of the things that they face on a day-to-day basis. We want to make sure that what their needs are reflective of what is being taught in those classrooms. That's it. Get it all?
Just one question. I'm sorry. Just one question, Ms. Henderson. What type examples of services the Title I gives?
So reading mainly, math, mostly reading math.
Okay.
Dr. Vitale is probably more well-versed, but yeah.
So we offer reading and math remediation support to students K-8 in those 3 specific buildings. So it qualifies by free and reduced lunch. So Newton, Clark Summit, and the middle school qualify for those services.
So they were previous Title I. Now all students would be eligible.
Right.
So just
Very good.
bigger band of people. So.
This is the first school year that I know of that the students are returning on a Thursday instead of Wednesday. So is there an increase? Are we doing a teacher in service extra day? Are the first year teachers starting on the Friday before the break? Could you explain the schedule for the the new teachers and the new schedule? Thanks.
Sure, absolutely. So new teachers always start the Thursday before Labor Day. So new teachers will have their first day of induction on August 31st, and then we welcome all faculty and staff back on Friday, September 1st. When we passed the OGAP professional development, that math professional development, we had talked about that it needs to be 2 consecutive days to really offer our teachers good quality content. So that is going to be the Tuesday and Wednesday, and then 2 days in October as well. So we anticipate a similar start next school year as well, pending on board approval of the calendar. But that's the reason why, because we really needed two days back to back to give them that content.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Dr. Schaefer, Superintendent's report.
All right. You can start on that second slide, Maggie. I have the privilege today of introducing KCBA, but prior to that, I would like to frame the discussion that we are going to have tonight in the presentation. And if you bear with me, at the end, I'm sure I'll get to the information you want to hear. Otherwise, you're going to have to hear me giving you a little bit of history. But I'd like to start every presentation with our vision statement, because everything that we do should be aligned to that. And discussing facilities is no exception. When we think about focusing on our students and maintaining excellence as a standard and accelerating excellence as a standard, then those are the qualities or characteristics that we need to think about in every decision that we make. So we started about almost a year and a half ago on our facility study. And in April, I gave an update where I talked a little bit about the history of Abington Heights. And I thought it would be appropriate to talk about that today. Because as a community and as a school board, I can think of no greater responsibility than education. I believe it to be a pillar of democracy and one of the most important tenets that we have to uphold as a community, ensuring that all of our children receive an excellent education. And with that, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we provide them with the facilities, the personnel, the resources, and the opportunities to obtain that. So as we start this process, there were 3 words that came to mind: transparency, being deliberate, and strategic. So while we are, in a way, just starting this process, because we will not, to be clear, make any decision tonight. I often joke or engage in hyperbole saying, if the board said to me tonight, let's build a new middle school, which cannot happen, but let's just suspend certainty, our kids wouldn't be walking into that school for another 3.5 years. This is not a residential timeline. We are thinking about our future. This is a multi-generational investment. I won't go through the history, but Abington Heights, in some way, shape, or form, through 4 different school districts, has been delivering on the promise of an excellent education for 193 years. Includes innovation, risk, focus, and excellence. And from time to time, as a community and a board, we have to make decisions about the future of our facilities, knowing that these are difficult decisions. These are decisions that the community will have to be involved in. These are decisions that we will implore all of our community members, whether they have children in the district or not, to engage in. Because it's important to us to maintain and accelerate our standard of excellence here, to make sure that Abington Heights is the place where everybody comes back to live and work and raise their children. Next one, Maggie. with that said, what I want to do is take a moment to look back and outline some of the things that the board has engaged in over the last year, year and a half. It didn't seem too long ago, but right after I came in January, we started really talking about a facility study, and we saw our first request for proposals in RFP in March and April of 2022. And we had many board members engage in that process, interviewing architectural firms, calling references, spending a lot of time knowing that this was important. Information from this study will be used to inform multi-generational decisions. So it was important that we got it right. In May of 2022, we had a district-wide survey to parents, students, and teachers. We did that in May of 22, and I will get to in May of 23. I mention it because I'm going to show you some data. Over 7,700 people responded to those surveys in the last 2 years. So I'm going to show you some perceptual data. Make no mistake, though, our community, our parents, have weighed in, and that's one piece. In July of 2022, we awarded KCBA the facility study contract. And from August to December, KCBA and some engineering firms went into all our buildings and started a very rigorous process of evaluating and indexing all of our buildings. In December 22, KCBA came back to the board and provided a presentation on some of the initial findings. In February of 2023, we posted the final survey to everybody and had a board presentation. From February to March, we engage in community facility study feedback presentations at a couple schools, archiving that information, answering questions, developing FAQs. In April 23, I gave an update to the board and the community, and I talked a little bit about the history and the importance of multi-generational investments. From May into June, we used the KCBA study, the State Police Risk and Vulnerability Assessment, and information from some of our committees to develop some short-term projects that we would engage in this summer and into next year. And also in May of 2023, KCBA was awarded a contract to develop a concept design for a middle school. And one of the options KCBA will present on today, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. And then May of 2023, we had another district-wide parent survey, and that brings us to today. And we're just at the beginning of the process. When I talked about transparency and engagement, I think that this timeline would indicate that we are committed to that, and it will only ramp up after this. This will be posted, and I will tell you that it is hard to read, but I'll be very truthful on the percentages on here. What I want to highlight here is this first year we did a study, a climate study. We talked about all sorts of different constructs, from leadership to education to our facilities, when we surveyed our parents, our students, and staff. We had facility questions, and the very first question was, is your school in good condition? And if you answered no, as a parent, student, or teacher, you got taken to another area of the survey. It said, then what areas do you recommend highlighting? What areas need the most work? 21.22%, or 80% of the parents at the middle school said it is not in good condition. 60% of the students said it was not in good condition. 96% of the teachers said that the middle school wasn't in good condition. And what they highlighted the most frequently are the classrooms and the bathrooms. But if you go through this, lighting, cleanliness, it was equal opportunity here. But I wanted to highlight that because in the following year, essentially we received the same type of data about our parents, students, and teachers' feelings. And all schools were looked at. I believe that that data tells a story. I want to be unbiased and take a look at it. I see this, and it tells me that parents, students, and teachers have concerns about the middle school at a greater level than some of the other schools. KCBA provided a report since February. One of the most informative tools there is a facility index score where they grade all of our mechanicals, our exterior, our interior. I'm sure that Mike and Emily will highlight that again tonight, but some of the things that we saw in the parent feedback are consistent with what we see in the facility index. And that's not to say that other buildings in other areas don't need work. This is part of the discussion that we will have in the future. So what can you expect from the board and our leadership team moving forward? You can expect that we will be transparent, we'll be strategic, and we will ask as many people that want to be part of the process to be part of the process. And that starts now with identifying and communicating our needs. We are not going to decide tonight what all of our needs are. That's not the purpose. But the information that we have before you and out there will help to inform what those needs are. And there are many needs. Remember, this district owns over 660,000 square foot of buildings. We own the equivalent of a neighborhood with 360 homes. That's a lot of maintenance to keep up with. There will be a lot of things that need attention, and we can't give attention to everything. So that is a great challenge in front of us, is prioritizing those needs and being accountable to our taxpayers. It's tough, and it should be tough. That's why the community has elected our board members. These are tough decisions. The next phase would be community engagement, where we will have focus groups, surveys, and task force where we're asking community members to get involved and provide input based on the data that we have. What are these areas of concern? Do you agree? What are your feelings about some of the plans in front of you? And finally, the communications of solutions. So after we are able to identify the needs and projects or project, how might we solve for that? What will the solution look like? Is that solution tenable? And then finally, I like this quote by Chip and Dan Heath: "Don't let the demands of the present interfere with your hopes for the future. In life, we can work so hard to get the kinks out that we forget to put the peaks in." There are many challenges in front of us. Fair funding. I talk about charter funding all the time. Talk about special ed funding all the time. Talk about the need for PlanCon at the state level. I don't talk about as much as some of the socio-political things happening, but certainly as we sit through our committee meetings, we know that there is a lot of attention on a lot of matters in education. It is a very busy space to be in, and it's challenging. However, We owe it to the future to think about what will Abington Heights look like in 2050. The state and IU, as far as schools go, are seeing decreases in enrollment at 7%. Abington Heights in the last 5 years has seen an increase in 2 to 3%. It's a differential of 9%. We are fortunate that we are living in a community where we focus on students, and excellence is the standard, where people want to come and live and raise their children. So with that said, I am going to kick it off to Mike and Emily, who will provide us with one of the options in our survey at the middle school. And I want to be clear about what this is. In this study, KCBA provided 3 options for a middle school. And if you read the study is long, there are recommendations for every school. We're starting here at the middle school because this is an area of need. The first option was a new school. The second option was a very large addition, building a facility onto the middle school that would house all 4 grades, and then demolishing the current half circle in front and putting a huge gym. Both of those are very similar in cost. The third option was a renovation and an addition, where I've asked them to take a look, because this is the one that is very difficult to visualize. What does a renovation look like in a school this size right now? This was also the most economical of all of them. But I want to reiterate that we are not saying tonight that this is the only solution, but we have to have a conversation starter. And this is where it will begin. So without any further ado, Mike, Emily.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you again. Hope you're enjoying the last few days of summer. I'm Mike Kelly. That's Emily Liuzza. Thank you again for having us tonight. As Dr. Schaefer had mentioned, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of directions that we can go. One of the things that we talked about in the spring was really focusing on the middle school and looking at a few options there. Building a new school, we kind of know what the numbers would be. There's a lot of land there. We're going to show that option of what that would look like. So not to say that there's not some thinking involved in the new school part, but we can all kind of have an idea of what new by itself next to the old might look like. But what does it mean to renovate that building? We spent a lot of time talking about the challenges of that building. And then as soon as we started talking about renovation, it's like, okay, well, I thought you said that building had a lot of issues. Well, it does. It also has a lot of kids. So if you think about it, if you take half of those kids and move them elsewhere, now all of a sudden maybe there's a little bit of space to create and provide 21st century safe educational spaces. So with that, we started saying, okay, well, all right, well, that's easy enough. We take 2 grades away. Well, where do they go? Which grades would be removed and essentially be put into an addition onto that school, rather than the option that Dr. Schaefer mentioned, option 2, where we kind of take down the pods and build all new educational spaces for grades 5 through 8. What if we did half of that? Build less, cost less. So that's the exploration that we wanted to share with you tonight. There are some very interesting and surprising advantages to that. And again, no decisions made tonight. This is just kind of a what if, but kind of a deeper dive exploration on one of those options. So a bit of a brief review, as Dr. Schaefer had mentioned, an FCI study talking about conditions. Anything between 45 and 60 was fair. Anything above 60 was in poor condition. And as we had mentioned, the middle school unfortunately ranked as your higher building. So that's at 67, so it's basically right on the edge there of falling into that category of being in poor condition. And one of the areas of most concern with that was the interior. When we talk about interior, we're talking about the educational spaces themselves, the environment that our students are in, safety, ADA compliance when it comes to restrooms and some of the things that were pointed out. So when we looked at the whole district, we kind of focused on the middle school, knowing that the interior was one of the bigger problems there. So to that, we took a look at, again, just kind of the general statistics of the building. You have 1,100 kids in a building of 140,000 square feet. That equates to about 126 square feet per kid. In context, a standard secondary school, kind of like a high school, would be about 180 square feet per kid. When we plan new elementary schools, we're usually at 135 square feet per kid. As kids get older, they physically get bigger, but the educational model obviously changes as well. In elementary school, you go to Mrs. Jones's third grade class, you're there most of the time, there's not a whole lot of moving. In secondary schools, you're going to a science lab, then you're going to a STEM space, then you're going to a different rooms. There's a lot more rooms, a lot more space, bigger gyms, bigger amenities. That's why secondary schools tend to be bigger. So when we just look at the existing conditions of that building, it is very, very small for the amount of students that are incorporated or enrolled within it. Capacity-wise, even with the classrooms and the very small classrooms that you have, you're already over that. So it's a very undersized building, and you're over capacity for the amount of students that are already in that space. So the biggest target, obviously, is the two-story half circle. Back in the day, they went, this was all open pods. Again, in the 70s, somebody thought that you just put 1,000 kids in one big giant space and they could all learn independently. That quickly didn't work out very well. So over the years, those open pods have been closed, but they've been closed with walls that are not fire rated, walls that are not secure, walls that are not acoustic, and there are certainly some spaces in those buildings, like the center pod here, that has no door at all. So we talk about lockdown issues, security issues, fire rated issues, noise issues. It's just not the best environment for learning. You have a lot of classrooms that are windowless, very kind of dark building there. It's at a half level, so I've got to go upstairs half a level, and then I got to go back down half a level to get to certain things. There's a lot of different level changes in the building that were challenging. In a lot of those cases, the hallways, corridor, stairways, they're 4 feet wide. That's very, very small. Again, you get some 8th grade kids that could be my size going up and down those stairs and banging into each other. That's certainly not large enough for middle school age students. So we've talked about those challenges here quite a bit. Essentially, in that half circle, there's twice as many kids that really that facility can fit. So we talked about options. We said, all right, we've got 80 acres of land. You can see Newton Ramsum up in the upper left corner there, in the middle school in the middle. What if we build a new high school, or a new middle school, rather? So we took a building that's roughly 200,000 square feet, which equates to about 165, 170 square feet per kid. So again, it's got 5th and 6th graders in there, so that kind of pulls the size of that down a little bit. Maybe we can make it a bit more compact than, say, 180 square foot building. So we're still being conservative just on the size. And that's what we're showing here. A 2-story building, brand new, gym. We knocked down the old school. We're building some fields and a new driveway. You can see a separate bus loop and a separate parking lot. Athletics, has a lot of space now as well to come back and build fields and additional parking. Obviously, the construction of that can happen by itself. And when that's done, you move all the kids over there. You knock down the middle school, and everybody's happy there. Separate bus loop and parent loops and things like that to, again, kind of constitute some site safety. An image of what a new building could look like. Again, this could look 1,000 different ways, but we're kind of contemplating this as a 200,000 square foot, 2-story new facility. Again, as I mentioned, kind of the easy part. So we're calling this option 2. This is, I think Dr. Schaefer had referred to this basically as option 3. There was another option that was considered where we take down the half circle and build a much larger addition. And when we studied that, it's almost the same amount of cost as building a new school. And by the way, where do you put all those kids while you're doing that? So we said, all right, well, is there a hybrid, something less expensive and something obviously that's constructible as well, that can be built while school is going on, keep kids safe while that's happening, and then provide us some swing space where we can move some students during the renovation of the rest of the building. So what we were showing here was a large addition, two-story addition to the side of the school with an option for a gym addition behind that. And we'll zoom in a little bit here as well. So basically this addition goes where the existing parking is. We build new parking over by the field. Let's go back and kind of show again the existing building. So you can see the existing parking and that space next to it. So the existing parking becomes the building. The space next to that becomes the new parking. We still have separate buses and separate cars. A much larger drop-off there than even what we have now. And again, I think separating the buses from that would certainly help bring some cars off the main road there and provide a little bit of a safer drop-off area. So when we zoom in, we kind of take the roof off, and we color-coded this to kind of show you what was new. So new structure is blue. That's a two-story classroom addition with a gym in the back. We like this kind of setup where the parking is right by the front door, so we would have a new front door space here as well as part of that blue. So that's the new face, the new front door of the school. The heavy renovation is then the half circle, and we're going to show you what we mean by heavy renovation. We mean heavy. The good news is there's actually no walls there anyway to knock down, so demo would be pretty quick. But coming back with a very, very different scheme in there is going to be what we're going to share tonight. And then light renovation. Again, a big part of things that pull the price down is doing less. So the open cafeteria, that remains. Again, that half circle auditorium, the finishes can be redone. We can get rid of the partitions and things like that and clean it up a little bit, but it's still where it is. There's no new auditorium. The music and art spaces in the back, we're going to take down some of the temporary walls there, but it's got a little less work than where we may be doing things in some other areas. So to keep the price down, there are some areas that we need to pull back on versus other areas that we would kind of gut and replace. So this kind of shows you it's a third of the building is new, a third of the building is heavy renovation, actually a little more than a third. And then the amount of light renovation. So there's a lot of new and a lot of heavy in this scenario. One of the criticisms we gave the building before was all the different levels. So if we're going to build an addition, the first question Emily and I went over was, okay, well, where's the new addition go? And what level do we want to put this at? So what we thought would be best is to put the entry-level addition at the highest level of the pod. So that all of that in yellow is at one level, from the gym all the way through the new addition of spaces. You can see the blue, that's going to be about 2 feet below in the cafeteria level. And all the way through that first upper level of the open pot, all of that is flat, believe it or not, flat. We're going to build a new addition to that level. We're going to flatten out the area behind the library there. Does this show up? No, it doesn't. I can do that on here, can I? Laser pointer. Watch that. There it is. Behind the library right now is a ramp to a ramp to a ramp to a ramp. And then there's some file cabinets in there too. All that goes away. And we just make all of this one level all the way through, and then all the way through a new corridor with walls and doors of that upper level of the pod. So we're going to enter the building here. We're going to come in. We can make a right and go to the 5-6 wing. We're proposing that 5th and 6th be in this space. Or we go straight, and we are in the upper level of the pods. So this is, let's call that 8th grade, and then we go downstairs to 7th grade. So you have two-story buildings, essentially, linked at one middle level. Come in here, I go up to that floor. Come in here, I go down to this floor. But all of this, all through here, is all at one level. And then you come down, we're thinking like a 2-foot ramp, so that's about 20 feet ADA compliant ramp, nice and easy, not too bad. Gentle slope, come down to the cafeteria level, and then all of this is at one level. So by flattening a few things and building the new addition at this level, we're really making this much easier to navigate. And again, I think the isolation of the 5th and 6th grade wing, and we're going to show you some ideas of that, from the middle school wing as well, is very helpful. You've got 5th graders that are leaving the only school they've ever known forever. They're coming to a brand new building. It's big and scary. Let's keep them to themselves. Let's create spaces and classroom spaces that feel and look like an elementary school. So here you go, kind of the breakdown of that 5-6 center there, the entrance piece here, the 7 and 8 academic center there, specialty rooms, again, band, music, art, things like that, and then proposed for a new gym. The existing gym stays here, but a possible new gym in the back. Second floor of the 5-6 center, and then the lower floor of what would be the 7-8 center of the middle school. So again, back into the main level existing, all the pods and tiny rooms and tiny hallways, and opening that up into one floor for one grade. So instead of having 25 classrooms in that space where we were trying to house 600 kids, this is significantly less. We've got essentially 13 classrooms around the outside, all with doors, all with windows, all with doors that lock, by the way. Then we also have some science labs here. We're looking at the 7-8 side of this. So in that curriculum, we would still have science labs. 2 science labs here, toilet rooms, large, corridor here that's 12 feet at its thinnest. IPC is your faculty areas, learning support classrooms and things like that that are still certainly needed. STEM spaces in the middle area, so we're going to move that library out of there and really make this geared towards middle school curriculum, 7th and 8th grade curriculum. The upper level here on the main level is very similar to what we would do on the lower level. Again, that lower level, whole bunch of pods. We open that up and basically mirror what's upstairs downstairs. There's some efficiencies there, any plumbing, any electric, all of those kind of things stacked. It's just that, and we could pick this grade. This could be 7th downstairs, 8th upstairs, or what have you. Science rooms, this large stair here in the middle instead of the little 4-foot center guy to link up to that mid-level where the STEM is, or you go up the full level and you're up to 8th grade. There are also 2 stairs at the ends of these corridors as well. Those are basically fire stairs that go directly outside, but they're internal to the building. So we took off those 5 stairs on the exterior that kind of look like nails on the crab of the circle there. All of those come down. They're kind of falling down on their own now anyway, unfortunately. So those come down, which greatly reduces the access points to the outside of this building now. On the lower level, we'd have a door here for that stair and a door here. This lower level may have a door out of here if we choose to keep this open. But that's it. We don't have the, dozen and a half at least doors that are along the outside perimeter of this space now. So this is a little before and after, so hold on. Outside now, these doors, we've got those little stairs, not a lot of windows, not a lot going on. This would be the idea of a addition to the side. So again, you can see this is at the upper level. It's linking that upper level of the pod. This is the new building kind of coming from what you'd see from the road. The stairs go away. This is still a circle. We said you can't renovate yourself out of a circle. It's still the half circle, but we can insulate this better. We can provide windows with better thermal properties, and quite frankly, just make this look new. So there's a lot of safety value. There's a lot of thermal protection value, and again, we're just providing natural light now into all of those classrooms that are along the perimeter. Again, kind of from the side, before and after. So this is, if I'm a parent, kind of heading up to the parking lot area. This is the administration on the first floor of the new addition. We always say this is important. I can see you, you can see me. That's a big proponent for security. Right now, the admin space is kind of tucked up and away. Here, all of these windows, reception, security, all of those areas are looking down at any vehicle approach that's coming to the site, and certainly anybody that's coming up and parking up here in the main parking lot. So we've got full visibility here of admin, and then the new main entrance to the entire school would be right here. So this is the two-story piece of the 5-6 center. Let's say 5th grade on the ground floor, 6th grade above, and then a gymnasium addition, which again could be part of the project, could be an alternate here as well. What's nice here is this could be completely isolated, where the rest of the school gets shut down, and the main basketball game, the main big event that's happening in the gym can happen. There's a ton of parking that's right here. I'm used to this being the front door. I come in this door, I see the basketball game, and I leave. It essentially can act as its own kind of independent space. Is that a video that didn't launch? No, it didn't want to launch. So as you come into the building, a two-story space, kind of a long hallway, again, flat. So what is this going to feel like for a 5th grade student or a, this isn't moving. I think that's what it is. Let's go back. Well, let's do this. We can play it off of here. There. So as a student walking into the building, what's that going to feel like if I'm a 5th grader or if I'm a 6th grader? So if we start back here at the main entrance, everybody's coming into the same spot. Every student that's being dropped off from a parent is coming in this side. They're dropped off at the front door here. In my experience as a 5th or a 6th grader, I'm coming in, I'm coming down the hallway to what kind of feels, and again, we're just kind of massing this up, there'll be colors and things, into a space that feels like a elementary school classroom. I've got cubbies to hang up my book bags. This is my 5th grade homeroom space, and it very much feels like what we would consider a typical elementary school. If I'm a 7th and 8th grader, kind of continuing down the hallway a little bit differently, but the same hallway. I say goodbye to my younger brother going down the hallway to 5th and 6th grade. I come back here is still part of the new addition, and then right, you can see this column. That's the existing building. That's the old pods. So we're going to tear the wall down and open that space up and link the new building to that. So this is what I mean about a completely different vision of what this building looks like. When I come in now to the existing school, you go in, admin's to the right, you kind of have to go down a flight of stairs, around something small, back up a tiny stair to get to things. If all of that was open and all at the same level, I think it becomes a very different feel for that school. So this space here becomes a bit of an open common space. Whiteboards, area for learning outside of the classroom. We're showing a little bit of glass here to look into the science areas. And I think that, again, just creates a completely different feel for what that space looks like. If we jump back to this open space here, so I came down this hallway. This is that commons area. This is the glass of that science space right there. If I go further down the hallway and get to the middle space here, I'm in a zone that looks a little like this. I'm looking back down the hallway. Again, I can see another science lab here. I've got, again, walls, much larger open space, glass at certain areas of the corridors. And then here, I'm at that stair between the upper floor and the mid-level STEM area and what would be the lower level for, let's call that 7th grade. So the old open library, the library moves into the 5-6 wing, and this space now is all for technology, STEM, project-based learning. We have what we call a little bit of a learning stair here. So students could come sit, have a presentation. You might be able to bring 2 or 3 classes here to have group instruction. Much more open space. This is a nice space internally now. There's a lot of natural light that goes into it. It's just that it's kind of a library, but kind of a whole lot of ramps, and also it's guidance and a whole bunch of other things that are kind of on top of one another. If we make this purposely active learning, I think it might be a bit more successful. So back upstairs, kind of looking down to that commons area. This is from the commons area looking over to the existing half circle, again, which is still at a half level. So I'm going up a half level to, again, we'll say 8th grade, down a half level to 7th grade. If I'm right off the side of this page is an elevator that links all of those spaces as well. So now I'm not going up and down a chairlift or anything like that. I'm at the same main center space that everybody else is. If they're going up and down in this main area right outside the commons, and I'm in a wheelchair, I'm doing the same thing. I'm right in this elevator shaft right here. I go up a half level, down a half level, or wherever I need to go. Everybody, every student is experiencing that same experience there. That tech lab, we're kind of saying it might be a little bit of a techie space, kind of in the middle of the library area, something kind of cool to experiment with as well. That could be based on computers, that could be television. It could be a lot of different things for different type of, again, STEM curriculum. Here's the shot kind of looking down towards that STEM area. You can see the split level of both those spaces beyond there. I think this is our last animation. Kind of coming down that half level stair and walking into the STEM space. So again, that whole space in the middle, we're just showing a couple of different labs, is actually going back down to that lower level. It could be anything. That could all be literacy, it could be STEM, it could be robotics, it could be TV studios. You know, that whole area, once we know it's not the library, once we kind of dedicate it a little bit more towards middle school, it can be whatever we want it to be. So that's the kind of exciting spot about those spaces, and being able to create these really kind of 21st century learning environments. This is, we kind of keep joking that if we were starting over, we wouldn't make this a circle. But since, again, removing half the grades and saying this is going to feel like a middle school, we don't have to make it feel like an elementary school, we're going to do something different here academically, well, then we can open things up a little bit more and create these types of secondary spaces, you know, preparing kids for their high school experience. So we have a couple other things to share, but we'll jump into the kind of baseball card stats of all of that. Come on. There. As we said before, we're gaining a lot of space. It's about 60,000 square foot addition onto that building. That's the size of a small school. That's almost what, Clark Summit, slapped onto the side of the middle school. There are a lot of existing classrooms, so of course we're adding more, but we're also right-sizing a lot of them as well. So right now, all of the existing elementary school classrooms, we'll say, are about 800 square feet. We're looking to go to about 850, giving them a little bit more space. The science labs are about 820. If they're going to 1,100 now, we can actually do some science experiments in those spaces. So while everything's getting a little bigger, certainly the music and art spaces as well, we're also gaining several classrooms as well. And as we dive into this, if we were really exploring this further, we'll work with the middle school leadership there to go over, okay, this needs to be this type of room, this needs to be that. But finally, we have a little bit of elbow room for which this can grow. So this slide is two things. One, it's cost. Everybody's going to jump there first. But the first thing is also square foot per student. So when we took the new square foot per student, we just grabbed 180 and said, all right, that's going to be our number. That's what we're going to attest this building to. The new middle school with a 64,000 square foot addition is almost the same size. It's actually a little smaller, which was surprising. A lot of times when we're debating between renovating and expanding versus new, it's like, well, if we add on to the building, the right size, all the things we need, you end up with a building that's 10, 15, 20% bigger than if you had built a new building. So then you got to factor in, I'm heating and cooling a lot more space. Well, again, unfortunately / fortunately, because the existing school is so undersized, we can build an addition at that size and just actually make it about the same size as it would be in a new school. So it's basically the same ending space. Now again, some of the compromises are we have 2 gyms at either end of the building. Typically, you'd put them together. You know, the auditorium is a little small, but it's okay for a middle school. So there's a few things that we need to kind of live with, you know, the cafeteria space and things like that, which again are fine. But when you do go to construction costs and total project costs, that's where there's obviously a big difference. The cost for renovation and addition is about 2/3 what a new school would be. That's not insignificant money. When you start to look at something at that size and scale, that's when we stop and go, all right, $39 million, well, maybe it is worth considering the renovation and addition piece. So again, huge advantages of building new. That's always great. Constructability is quicker. It's a little bit cleaner. When we're done, everything's exactly where we want it to be. But I think what we found was the renovation and addition of that building actually could provide some really dramatic and exciting spaces. The success of being able to kind of have an elementary school portion of it and a middle school portion of it, I think academically works really well as well. So to end, as Dr. Schaefer said, no one's looking for a decision tonight. Obviously, this is the beginning of further discussions, but I think it provides some context of, no, maybe that is an option to consider. As we said as well, understanding project schedules, things take a lot of time. And not that anything certainly out there may get started as early as next year, but any of these other HVAC projects or some of the other things that we had talked about in some of the other schools, any consideration for summer of 2024 work, those are things that the board should be considering now and into the fall. Obviously, a lot of those things take some time. So a lot at you, a lot of seeing that building in a completely new way. Any questions, comments, or considerations from the board?
Do we want a public comment and
Oh, sure.
roll that together? I don't know. And Mike, if you would field the facilities, or I guess I'd ask you any public comments on this particular topic that people would like to ask questions about, or? Sure.
So, I saw the capacity, you were talking about the new building and the renovation, 1,100 students, so we're at 1,100 students. Do we not project some sort of growth if we're having growth like that?
Yeah.
If we're increasing 2%, do we want to go a little?
Right. So this, your existing capacity is 1,100, or your existing enrollment is 1,100, same capacity. So the new capacity would be 1,200, planned for 1,200 students, but actually being able to, let's say, we said 1,450 would be the maximum size. So we plan for new, we plan for 85% full. If you tell me you're school for 1,200 kids, we're going to divide that by 85%, which will give you 1,450. So that's how big the school's going to be. You always want to make sure you already have no growth. So the growth from 1,100 to 1,200 is incorporated, and then any additional growth is
Additional three? Or
Yeah,
total
just-
three?
And then
Okay.
when you're done, you move kids into the addition, and then you have to renovate the top. So there's an extra set in renovation. You're not building as big of an addition, but it still takes a lot of time. So that's factored into the cost as well. It takes a little longer, so the contractors will be out there a little longer. But again, you're not building nearly as much, so that's where the cost comes down. But there is more time to build and renovate than just build new, because it's more complicated to tie everything.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Could you come to the podium so we can open the door?
So, good evening. Thank you for asking for public comment. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask specifically about the renovation option. So, from personal experience growing up throughout elementary school, during a renovation in a portable for basically was almost 4 years, was not a great educational experience for me. So I wanted to find out, obviously different school district, different time, but how are we planning on accommodating the students during a time period when we're basically tearing the school apart, half of it?
Debate back and forth with the same microphone.
Oh, no.
No, it's fine. That's how all debates should be. If you're that close, it'll be a little bit easier. That does make things more complicated, just like she had mentioned. What's nice with the addition is essentially isolated by itself. That's the front door now. It wouldn't be during construction. So that we would move administration, everybody would be going to the door by where the gym is. So there's a lot of things that would have to change in those 2 years of construction of the new building. But that's clean enough because it's pretty much by itself. So we would make sure the contractors are on one side of the wall, the kids are on the other side of the wall, and any big change orders and things like that happen over the summer. Then when the new building's done, that's for 5th and 6th grade. Where does 7th and 8th grade go? So that's the big question. So there's a couple of different options where there are some temporary ways that we can create rooms inside the existing building. That's one option. Or they live in mods for a year. That's another option. Or they go someplace else for a year. So that transition year is something we still need to work out. The point would be to make sure that they're in a safe environment and a proper environment for 7th and 8th grade learning. That 5th and 6th grade building is a little oversized because we know there's kids coming, so there would be, let's say, 7 or 8 classrooms in there that we could still use. There's a couple of other rooms that could be used as well. We've done temporary spaces like in the Ox gym that's there, so you have that one large gym. We'd have the new big gym. That Ox gym, that could get separated into 4 classrooms. So there's ways to do that. Mods are never fun. Plus you're renting money, and so you're going to spend $1 million on modular trailers that basically just get thrown away. So how can we safely put those kids in that building while that half circle is being renovated? That's something that would be a transition year, but everybody would have a space. We've worked that out with faculty and staff to make sure that that works and that there's no academic compromises during that year either. Make sure, if you need a space for science, we have that space. Even if that's temporary, we can still relocate that back. Because that whole half circle is going to have so much work done in it that you're not going to want anybody in that. We talked about, well, we could save the lower level and we'll work on the upper floor. Well, that's too much distraction. They're going to be upstairs banging away. That's a lot of distraction. But so if we can isolate the rest of the school, just like we're going to isolate the school when we build a new addition, that would be the goal for the year when we renovate the pods. Shut that half circle down, renovate all that. Contractors can go in from the outside. They can bring in all their tools. They can do everything they need to. Oftentimes we know, contractors know when PSSAs are. You go, listen, those are 4 days and you just can't be here at all. That's all worked into schedules as well. We've done it a lot. It's messier than building new, but there's a big cost difference between the two. So it can be done. We're doing that in a lot of different places even now. So if that's an option that's chosen, we could bring the community and the board to a couple schools that were doing that as well and say, yeah, we had to, we were in this room for this year, and then next year I was over here. But when I got back, I had a brand new room, and everything was fine. And we really didn't know that construction was going on during teaching time. So.
One other thing, I guess, I was wondering wondering about, and I think you even mentioned this with some of the proposed designs, traffic control in front of the middle school. One of my children is a current middle school student. It's not great, hasn't been great. Has there been any thought, if we go with the addition, right, it doesn't change anything in front of the school ultimately in terms of the traffic circle or anything else, really? Like we mentioned, we put the addition on, but it kind of goes off to the side. Buses are that way. But it doesn't really necessarily lend itself to anything with the main road, with people having to be on the side of the road or anything else like that, or in and out in the morning. Is there any thought about traffic control regardless of whether it happens to be South Ave Township, have a cop out there in the morning, or traffic light, anything like that?
Yeah, so that road's a state road, so putting anything out there would take some permits. We had shown an idea before of another road that would take us from the parking lot area to where you go in for Newton Ransom to provide another road there. So all of those things, because of the issues that are being dealt with for traffic now, that would all be part of the solution. So whether it's exactly that, or if we have to make a larger parent loop in that parking lot area just to provide more space to get a lot of cars off the street, that would be important. The strategy would be to separate cars and buses. Keep all of those cars to the side, but make sure that we have enough space. Drop-off's always easier than pickup. So pickup now, the issue is all of the buses along the side basically would be blocking parents. So let's widen that area, get the parents into the parking lot sooner. That gives the buses actually more bus lane to queue up. So that would be, the answer is we will find an answer to those issues and make sure that those are being addressed. Whether that's a new road that links that parking area over to where Newton Ransom's entrance drive is, or if that's just longer, wider parking lots to get everybody off the road and try to separate them that way. We're certainly aware of the issue, and we would be doing everything we can to solve it, whether it's a new building or an addition.
The last thing I wanted to ask about was more of the technology space. You mentioned as part of the design, we're facilitating new methods of learning, different environments, things of that nature. If we're going to basically be tearing apart the building, I'm assuming we're going to be restructuring the existing space in a way that kind of future-proofs it, for lack of a better way to describe it, from a technology perspective, to continue to have technology enablement for, leading up towards 2050, right? Because when I go in classrooms now, we don't have clear walls, there's not really any significant technology investments, things of that nature, so that's why I'm kind of thinking about that. I'm assuming that's part of what is proposed.
Yeah, I mean, the only good thing about the original open pod is there's no walls. So it all goes and it's all open. So we can put it back any which way we want. Now, putting back enclosed rooms with soundproof and proofing and doors and all those things are important to that educational space. So the technology needs to be flexible for that as well. Until they invent anything different, it's probably going to need power and data. So we can create power and data on a teaching wall and other walls in those spaces so that the district has the flexibility to move some of those things around. I mean, we're going to be knocking down everything, so you're going to need all new electrical outlets, all new Wi-Fi, all new wiring. I mean, all of that stuff is brand new, like you would have in a brand new building. That's why the heavy renovation number is as heavy as it is, because it's everything. That would all be included in that space. Obviously, in the new addition would be new, but anything in a renovation area would be set up to be, open, wide, and flexible for whatever somebody else thinks is a good idea 50 years from now for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. Any other questions from the public? Okay. Mrs. Junior, did I see your hand up first?
I didn't raise my hand, but I do have a few questions, but I don't necessarily need to go first.
Okay, you know what?
Go ahead. Okay. You said everything. I noticed on there the old gyms, are those still going to be used for auxiliary gym, or will they stay intact?
So there's a lot of options there. I think in a middle school of this size, we would typically have 2 gyms. So in the issue with the existing gym is it's a little too small. It's hard to increase the size of that. So if we go back here, sorry, the new gym is in yellow in the upper right. That would be full high school length, cross-court basketball. We could have, I think we're showing about 800 seats there, so it's a lot more seats than what you have now. If you said, hey, that needs to be 1,000 seats, okay, we can make that a little bit bigger. But we have some space and some size up there for that. Again, it's kind of isolated where all the parking is. The majority of it would be. So that's kind of nice. The other area, let's go back to our laser pointer. That got me in trouble earlier. This is the existing gym here. That would remain. It's fine. It's a little small. Maybe that's the JV team or the 7th grade team plays here and the 8th grade team gets to play in the big gym. But it's fine as a gym space. We could open this up a little bit. We're showing so that you could still park in the smaller lot, bring people in here, and shut this area down just like we would shut that area down for an event there. So it kind of gives you, maybe the school game is going here and the adult league is going on over there. It gives you some ability for that. The auxiliary gym that's here has a number of issues. First is that it's essentially a hallway too. So you kind of have to walk through it to get there. And it's smaller than this already undersized gym. So we kind of looked at that and said, all right, you're not a gym anymore. We're gonna build a hallway here so that we have a full secure hallway that links the cafeteria space to this kind of secondary gym entrance. This yellow piece here, we're thinking are new locker rooms to service this space. Could be very, very small locker rooms. Basically just a quick place to use the restroom and change. While these may be larger team rooms, maybe these have showers and things in them. And then this other space, we are actually considering that to be another STEM space. It's kind of off this center area, so you could have big STEM lab 1, 2, and 3, kind of all in that center space, and it's still kind of near the ebb and flow of the rest of the school. So we would utilize that existing aux gym as a hallway, locker rooms, bathrooms, and maybe an educational space in that sense. There's obviously a lot of other options. But this, if the main gym becomes the aux gym, that's a good size aux gym. The fitness area is nice. It's got good storage. The 2 locker rooms that you have here now, the challenge with them is they're not ADA compliant. The boys in the basement's kind of scary actually. And then the girls one here, one idea was to provide a ramp here that could take you up to that level. So that could be fitness. That could be, again, something else that's for physical education or something like that. So there's options in that area. Is this the 7th and 8th grade gym? And that's the 5th and 6th grade gym. So it provides a lot of different options. Again, this is just kind of a first thought, first go of what we could utilize some of those existing spaces for.
I also noticed in one of your other diagrams a few athletic fields. Are those turf fields, and that are included in that price?
They are not turf fields. They could be, in which case that price would need to increase. There's a lot of land to the side there that would need to be graded for the parking lot, for the building, if it's a new building, or if it's not. Some of that is moving dirt. Essentially, you're just trying to create a 100-yard flat space. So if we were able to provide that up in that area, it rolls, but it could be flattened a little bit. Cut a little here, add a little there, to try to get 2 fields up in that area. We may need a retaining wall to hold up the back end of the one, but in either of those cases here, we feel that you could get 2 fields up in that area. It's all open, right next to parking, right next to the team room. So if I'm on the soccer team, I could go into the locker room there, get changed, and come out for practice or a game there. So there is some ability to develop this area. Turf just costs more, a lot more. That's drainage, that's the turf itself and things like that. So
I was just wishful thinking.
no, I mean, again, it could be added, it could be something that's explored.
Sure. My last question is, any type of environmental friendly, any type of solar panels being put in parking lots, or geothermal, or windmills, or anything like that? Is that in your?
So we'd have to look, the very first thing we look at when we're looking at HVAC systems is energy efficiency. One of the reasons we want to renovate that half circle is because there's not a lot of insulation there. So one of the things we'd be doing is putting insulation on the inside walls of that school. So if you go to the block wall of that wall now, we would be in 6 inches from that wall because we're going to pack that out with insulation and vapor barriers, add new drywall on the exterior. So we're going to make a better winter jacket around that half circle to start with. The new systems would be very high energy efficient as well. Geothermal is certainly one system to choose from. It's great, it's expensive, and it's a little labor intensive to operate as well. But with our engineers, we would take a look at that and review. Solar power is the same thing, where there's, we talk about our roofs kind of being solar ready, so it's ready for solar panels, but you don't have enough roof here in order to put enough solar panels for that building to be what we would call net zero. You would need a few acres of space. Now that again could be something that is incorporated in the future, or are there panels on the field where you could provide even more panels? But all of those things would be incorporated in a study on energy efficiency and shared with the district.
Thank you.
Mike, Mr. Fleming was first.
So I have a couple questions. First, one of the major concerns that we had with the middle school is the circular hallways. And, we're not, from a security standpoint, we're not eliminating those hallways now. What happened to the security concern? Is it because they're wider, there's less concern?
They're a lot wider.
So can you explain that? Why is that less of a security risk?
When you have because we can actually monitor it now. So if you go into, let's go back to the image here. Actually, we could jump into that too. Where's the movie here? Go back to that video. Well, this is going the other way. Maybe the one where we walk down the corridor. Let's go back to this guy now. As you're looking down the corridor, so this is standing in that center stair looking down the corridor. By the nature of the curve, eventually the corridor goes away and I can't see it. That's where that's a security issue. So again, typically you wouldn't design in a circle. Now the difference here between what this looks like and what you have now, the hallways are so skinny that loss of vision happens a lot quicker. We could essentially provide a camera here, here, and here and cover the entire hallway because it's much wider. Having all of that natural light is very important as well, and having a place for kids to go and lock down. In a lockdown, now there's rooms without doors or walls that aren't overly secured. If you're in a hallway like this and there's a lockdown, you go into this classroom, that door locks, I can't see into this room, all of this is shut down. I have a place to go now. I have room in order to get safely out in a fire to a stair tower and out versus kind of shuffling down a 4-foot wide hallway. So I think the safety concern of the circle is much less because we're making things wider and then providing a lot of secured areas to go to in any type of emergency greatly enhances the security concerns that we have now in that space, where again, you're in this kind of tiny little hallway with no place to go in a room that doesn't have a door. So there's ways to improve this and certainly increase the security monitoring of that, of the new corridor that's much wider that we're creating.
Mike, can you be more specific on that? Because this is a good question. I had asked that before because that was one of the questions we had. And I believe you had quoted, in some spaces, we're only 4 feet. And this is why we have some safety issues with kids walking back and forth. In the other areas in the proposal there, we're looking at 12 and in some places 16 feet.
Yeah, so
So
these.
the difference between like I'm here to the wall versus where Mike is to the wall, so that,
These hallways here, this is the existing building. So you've got these tiny little stair towers that were just kind of the one-way stairs that come up. These little areas here with bags and shelves and things like that can get as small as about 4 feet wide, which is just way too small. If I'm in this slot, I'm kind of in this open space. I can go to this room and I can always run out of these stairs, but if I'm in here, I don't have a door to lock down. In an emergency, if everybody's kind of leaving, say, these 3 classrooms, we'd all be in this tiny corridor, all going to this tiny corridor, all going down this tiny little stair. And then we're into this zone, which is skinny as well. Now, these stairs here in the new plan, we're widening this. This gets much larger. We now have easy stairs to kind of come up here. We've created new spaces. This is a much wider stair than what we have now. It's like twice as wide as what we have now, to get down to a space that's greatly larger than 4 feet. Now, when I get here, I think these were about 6 feet wide, these stairs. So this is tight, but not that, this isn't the worst part. So this we can deal with because it brings us up and we have a much wider, larger open common space, and we're doing that on both sides. And then we're creating fire stairs, enclosed fire stairs that are wide, in the corner here of each of the pods. So the stair there, the M is a mechanical room, but this stair space here provides me the ability, I could change classes here. I could go in here, go down the stair and come out at the lower level there, or I could do this here on much wider stairs as well. So the circulation of all of those things kind of going from, rooms that are all funneling, and these 2 guys funnel into this as well. So you've got 5 rooms funneling into this tiny little thing that sends me into this tiny little thing down here. All of that we're just widening, and again, removing half the kids, removes half the traffic. So it's, all of this is not to say a compromise, because we're not going to compromise in safety, but it's a vast improvement of what you have. And we're creating a space that we could sit there and go, yeah, this is a safe environment because I can monitor that. I've got wider areas. I've got areas where I can go in lockdown. Like all the things we didn't have before, we now have all of those things. We might need an extra camera or 2 just because this is a curved hallway, but it's still much wider, much more, the ability to supervise that is much greater than what we have now.
Thanks for that explanation. The other question I have is, now that we have this blank canvas potential, and we've got this building where we house, all the, administration, and we've talked about potentially selling this building in order to create more revenue or money, right? So, is there an opportunity, since we're building brand new, we have this blank canvas, to put administrative offices much smaller than what we have here, which in my opinion is totally unneeded. We don't need this big room. We need a very small administrative area. Can we put, has any consideration been given to putting the administrative offices into the new build?
Yeah, if you're building new, you could certainly do that. Because we'll just add, we have the program that we need for the school, and we'll add 10,000, 12,000 square feet of space for an admin space. So if it's a new building, that's easy to do. Even in this solution, if it was decided, yeah, let's build new and have that be its own isolated piece, that could be a little bar off the gym or something like that, where it's its own piece. Again, you want to separate the entrance of that from the school. So that could always be included in new construction. It could always be included, if we wanted to, in renovation as well, where, all right, maybe this back bar here isn't music and art anymore. We're going to make this the DAO. And then we'll build, now we have to replace and build new music and art spaces. So there's a couple of options at this site. We talked about the high school as well. If there's an idea of some expansion to the high school for some academic spaces, maybe the old academic spaces that were a little too small for certain things, that could be isolated and become part of a district office idea as well. So there's there's always options. Some of the successful ones that I've seen is where you find a school or a few spaces that have some spaces that just aren't working. They're too far isolated from everything else, or they're too small. So we're going to rebuild those academic spaces, but then we're going to move the district offices into those rooms. We're doing a study right now in Methacton School District. They have some math rooms that are fine, but they're like all the way at the end of the building. You got to walk like an extra 5 minutes just to get to them. And there's a parking lot right next to them. I was like, well, that's perfect. So let's build an addition. We'll include new math rooms as part of the addition, put it in the right spot where all the other kids are, and we'll just take those rooms and turn that into a district office. The parking lot's already there. We're going to poke a hole in the sides of the building with a little awning that says district office. There's your district office. So those types of options are always on the table, whether that's part of a new middle school, a renovated middle school, or really anything. The key is making sure that we can isolate it from where the academic spaces are.
Thank you. Mr. Bell.
The solar farm, is there anything that we know that tenant is going to expect to use this?
Yeah, so that's either got to be redone or there's going to be, our first suggestion, which is not an easy thing to say, would be to try to work with the municipality to get sewer out to that site. That would take some struggle, that would take some conversation, that would certainly take some cost. The assumption here is that we're working off that existing plant with some upgrades. We're going to increase the size of the building. We're planning for more kids, but we're not planning for that many more kids. In a way, and this would be the argument, we're right-sizing the building for the amount of kids that are already there. It's not like we're adding 4th grade or bringing 9th grade here. So the upgrades in plumbing fixtures will just be essentially what we're adding to the building. We know there's not enough facilities there now, so we would need to add some. However, the ones that we add will be low flow, toilets and things like that, and a focus on, as you had mentioned, energy consumption, water consumption as well. So there's trade-offs of all of those things, but the numbers, at least that we're giving right now, is saying maintaining that existing site and improving it. But if there's options to get public utilities there, that's always a big help. We did another project recently where we delayed, the whole project was delayed a year in order to get gas to the site. But we said, you know what, that's worth it. Whatever we need to do to get gas to the site, because otherwise we were looking at an all-electric system with propane. So sometimes it makes sense to, try to, upgrade those utilities when we can.
Mr. Wadensky.
Your cost estimates, do they include contingency? And
Yes.
also, are these based on today's dollars or future dollars of when the construction's going to?
We are basing them as of in concept bidding next year. Now, there's a contingency in there that gets you another year. But that's a contingency I'd rather hold on to.
Right.
There are a lot of construction costs that are going out of control. Every time we meet with Dr. Schaefer, we keep showing him a higher number. And I keep saying the same thing. I've never seen a building at that cost, but it's coming. We have a new middle school in Upper Darby, which is a completely different structure of costs and things, going out to bid in 2 months. Reading just opened a school at about $350 a square foot. We're showing $375. But Hempsfield out in Pittsburgh, that scared the heck out of me. That came in over $400. Now, that's a very different project, a very different area, a very different situation. But there's a lot of projects that we'll be watching over the next couple of years to see where that number lands. Every meeting we have with you, every option we show, will show where the costs are. Inflation over the last 2 years has been crazy. So all we can do is watch what other building costs are. We're working in Scranton right now, so we had pretty good renovation numbers when we were talking about that. I mean, that's only a couple months old. But new construction numbers are continue to grow. So those numbers kind of represent, if you gave us the go-ahead in the next, say, 6 months, we think those are valid. There's contingencies in there for escalation and contingencies for construction renovations as well. New construction tends not to have as many problems as renovation costs. So the renovation percentage is a little higher, but there are numbers built in for that.
So what kind of percentage increase a year from now do you guess?
Forever, it was 3.5%.
Okay.
Last year was 25, this year was 20. It's
You're right.
got to stop at some point, but, so I think we used 8% for design contingency, so we'll call it above the line. So the construction cost number includes an 8% contingency. Then total project includes 5% on top of that for construction contingency. That's we broke ground and found something we didn't think we were going to need. Or, we started renovating the locker rooms and, found we know the abatement numbers would be included in construction costs, but, and just found something that, there's a hole in the roof that no one saw until we opened up a ceiling, so we better patch it, things like that.
And the module temporary classrooms, if we do the renovation?
That would be in soft costs. Our goal would be, as I mentioned to that gentleman, would be not to do that. It would be a little tight. We were kind of counting classrooms and counting heads going, we could probably get 7th grade into the 5-6 center, but where does 8th grade go? So some of that, like I said, we've done temporary facilities as well. The library, if we didn't renovate that until over a summer, that could be an area that could be chopped up into classrooms while we're working on the half circle. So there's options there. Not to say that we wouldn't need modulars, but we're going to do everything we can to
But the
try not to.
modulars aren't included in this?
No,
this
because I
estimate.
think we could do it. The goal would be to do it without it. Now, if that didn't work, then that's where the process starts of, hey, this got a little less expensive, but here's something we didn't think of, and unfortunately, those things always kind of balance each other out. And there's contingencies on top of that in case we missed more than we thought.
Mr. Abdullah. You good? Mr. Azar.
Thank you, Mr. Acker. I have 2 questions. So, a few presentations ago, they're starting to merge together in my mind, so forgive my memory not being completely clear on it. But when you showed us the first 2 options, which were the full new school and then the substantial renovation and then keep only a little bit of the old school, those 2 numbers are very close together. But your new school number now, if I'm remembering correctly, is a much bigger number than the new school number from a few months ago. So is that just inflation since then? There's nothing else that's really changed in the design? Yeah. So my second question is, when you look at the A and the B that you're looking at now, obviously there's a lot of benefits to building just a new school that have nothing to do with the finished project, but the process to get there is a lot easier if you do a new school. But once you have that finished product, can you highlight what you would perceive to be, and I know there's probably a lot of them, but things that would be really meaningfully better about that brand-new school versus the substantial renovation?
Everything's right-sized. Everything's where it wants to be. Athletics is all together. All of the classroom, every space has natural light going into it. Any of the things, the corridors are not curved. So there are a lot of things to like about a brand new building. The entire building has modern insulation to it. We're trying to do that at least on the curved part in the renovation scheme, but there's a lot of other parts of the building that that would just drive the cost up more. So you're certainly looking at a more energy efficient building if it's new, just by its thermal properties. But that's not to say when you redo the half circle and build the addition that we haven't vastly improved that along with a brand new HVAC system as well. Other things like, I think one of the biggest advantages is going to be construction time and lack of disruption. That tends to be the toughest challenge, is those 3 years. Now it's 3 years, and we'll say messages like it's short-term pain, long-term gain, and all those things. Everybody goes, that's great. So there is some real things to look at there, as safe and secure as we can make those things. But again, looking at the difference between the compromises of size of spaces, locations of spaces, we would have a two-story building and that's it, not two two-story buildings with another half level as well. We definitely made it better than it was, but it's still a building with 5 levels and not 2. So that means 2 elevators, and going back to the renovation scheme, to link different areas. So there's a lot to look at with, again, being able to isolate all of academics, a new auditorium that isn't also a half circle, a cafeteria that could be opened or closed. That's a conversation we can have. So there are a lot of things in the existing building that we're going to continue to live with, which we see as choices. If I'm looking at safe, warm, and dry, that open cafeteria is safe, it's warm, and it's dry. Would I rather it be enclosed? Maybe. But we're keeping those kids safe, and that's an adequate space for 4 lunch periods with 300 kids at a time. So it's not to say I'm okay with it. It's meeting the standards of modern education and safety, certainly. It would be improved if that was in a new building. So I think all of the comments and concessions that we're making in the renovated scheme answers the question of why is the new building better?
Mrs. Karen, would you go? Are there any other questions? Mr. Pansky?
Yes, just one more on the new building construction cost. That does not include demolition of the old?
Yeah.
Oh, it does?
No, it does.
Good.
So that would be part of the construction cost.
Okay.
So when we talk construction, it's everything construction. The difference between construction and total project is another line of contingency. Soft cost, which includes fees and permits and all the things you have to pay, lawyers to figure out and stuff like that. Furniture, technology, and things like that. Assuming we're moving into a new building, I don't think we're bringing the old chairs with us. So that we really try to show that as everything. So there's not here it is. Oh, but by the way, there's still $2 million in furniture, $3 million in this, $2 million in that. Well, wait a second, that's not total. So the construction cost number there for new does include taking down the old building. It includes new fields, but not turf. So if we decided to do that, that's a change. We can say, okay, let's do turf. We're either adding to the budget or we're taking it out of something else.
Thank you.
I just have just a couple of short ones. The space behind the new building, what is that? Is that a courtyard or what would it?
The space behind the new building?
Yeah, it looked like there was a green space behind.
These are the existing trees.
No. Go back to the schematic of the floor plan.
This is existing. So this is the existing school here. There is like an open field behind it. You're saying the new building or the renovation one?
The 5 and 6.
The 5, 6, 7. So that's this.
Behind that, between the old building and the new building, there's a green space.
Yes, that's a courtyard. So here.
Is that an efficient use?
So this is the existing exterior facade. So when you walk up to the building now, the front door is here.
Okay.
You see that?
Yep.
So that existing front facade is this.
Okay.
We're essentially butting this blue box into it to make that connection, and then making that, kind of the new look to everything. So as we go here, that's that facade. So these trees end up in that courtyard when that building comes out in front of it. So that's existing here. That's kind of the front door there. And then here, we're saying now the front door is part of that new addition.
I'm just wondering, the purpose of the courtyard. What, is there a need for something like that?
I would say the very first thing, the main purpose of a courtyard is provide natural light into the surrounding areas. So in this case, that's how all of these classrooms are getting their natural light. That's how these spaces, We're thinking this is nurse, we think this is guidance, we think this is a life skills studio. Again, we didn't get into more specifics of things, but one of the pods, it's 2 pods now, that's up half a level, is life skills. That's some of our kids with our strongest physical needs, and they've got to go in, go up, go down, and then take a chairlift to get to a space. Now they're kind of off in the corner. Here we're trying to put them more right in the middle of the building. They're near the front door, so they're coming in all at one level. They come down the ramp, and they're in a much larger space. One thing we just did in an elementary school out by Du Bois, we created an addition that created a little bit of a courtyard space like that. We backed their autistic support classrooms up to that courtyard, and then created that courtyard as an outdoor place for those students to be able to go outside when the weather's nice, play outside, learn outside. They have a couple like learning tables and things like that. It was nice because it was right off their room, so they could help those children get in and out quicker. It was enclosed, so there was security to it, not only from outside people, but also from the kids running away. So there was some nice aspects to that, so that could be something, again, that could be enhanced here off of this space if that remained our autism room and life skills room.
And just one more question. It's more of a comment, I guess. The one thing I'm a bit fuzzy on is, we have needs for the other schools as well, some serious needs, right? I'm thinking the high school in particular. And I know one of the next steps is to build a project plan, for this. But how do we integrate the urgent needs of the other schools? And will that be integrated into the project plan?
Yes, and I think that's the whole reason for the plan.
So it's not just,
right,
specific to the middle school.
Right, and that's where.
A more comprehensive.
Yeah, and when, well, obviously it's which one is a question for the middle school, new or renovated, and then when, and where does that fit in? So I think that's obviously part of the larger equation of total cost over 5 years, 10 years, or something like that. Are we building a new middle school and doing all these other things? Or are we going with a solution that works as well, has some compromises, but costs less, and then what's all the other things, and then what's that total price? So if there's a $39 million difference between the two, that helps. I mean, there's, not to say that's $39 million you have left over. We don't have anything yet. But when you're budgeting all of those things, when we look at HVAC at Waverly and that potential little entrance addition, or HVAC issues at the high school, with maybe a STEM addition or a library renovation, some of those other things we talked about. All of those things need to be budgeted. So when is the middle school, and then which one, and that'll equate to cost in that master plan.
Mike, does anybody have any other questions?
Just
The flooring, is it carpeting, is it flooring? What kind of flooring is in through the halls and in all
So
the?
typically, we would go with a hard floor. So we try not to have carpet. Now, we may have carpet in the library space, but typically it's either a tile or a moppable floor surface. In elementary schools, teachers could still bring in like a area rug or something like that, and which is fine to sit on and have reading time, but they can be moved and cleaned and replaced if needed. So in that renovated space, we would take everything out and come back with an all-new tile floor, and then in the new addition, we could choose from a few things, but obviously tile or some sort of hard surface would be recommended.
Try to put you on the spot. Oh, Phil, go ahead.
Oh, just two questions. So first of all, you did a great job, because you were asked to do kind of a monumental task, because there's so many options, and but I think you've done very well for what you were asked to do. I want to go back to what Mr. Fleming talked about. I think sometimes it's natural to be constrained in our thinking about, the options we're looking at are only what exists today. For example, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. We've had a number of capacity problems. Here, maybe too much capacity. But at Waverly, I've never heard someone say, we have so much space at Waverly, we don't know what to do with it. And And that causes problems. And, you know, some members of the community have said, well, Phil, you know, if we're going to look at doing major renovations or building a new school, should we look at capacity as a whole for the whole district and say maybe that 4 and 5 is, or excuse me, the 5 and 6 is a 4, 5, and 6? Because what that does is that will allow natural capacity to open up at the other schools, which have way limited capacity options. And I pick on Waverly. I love Waverly, but Waverly's a little restricted in what they can do, right? You can't build a 3rd floor, I don't think. So, you know, if we're going to invest $80 to $120 million, I just want to make sure that we look at things like the admin building, the administration building, and capacity issues that already exist at other schools. We know. I mean, what was it, in 2017, we had a major capacity issue at Waverly where we were even thinking about potentially redistricting, and it worked out. But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, you know? And we dodged that. But I just want to make sure that this is a huge investment, regardless of what we do. And I want to make sure that we're solving the problems in the district as a whole, whether that includes things from the high school or capacity issues, because we know we have capacity issues at the elementary schools at times, and one was just recent. So I do want to mention that, and you weren't asked to do that. This is more for the public and for the board to think about, you know, are we restricting our scope to new construction to 5, 6, 7, and 8? Is that what we're talking about here? Because if we are, I think we are missing some opportunities, especially when we discuss a new building. Because what I got from your presentation today, and this is my second point, there's extra costs, and they're big costs. And it may not be dollar, but it may be soft dollars in terms of disruption. You know, what's the cost to the educational disruption of 7th and 8th graders during a major renovation? I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we didn't quantify it. And the speed of which, I didn't realize it was a factor of 2, that a new school would be twice as fast as the new plus renovation, whatever we want to call that option, the new plus renovation, the one that you just went through. So those things aren't quantified. So when we see the numbers on the page, I'm not criticizing your numbers. You did exactly what we asked you to do. But it's not comparing apples to apples, because there's more cost that I see, more risk in terms of security, IT, the gentleman who brought up the IT. Having a new school, IT is way different, you know, way more flexible. Because as you said, and we've heard this many times, we can't outflex a concrete semicircle. You know, we're building on a failure, essentially. And we're doing our best with the reality of how much things cost. But there, we are not, when you see the number of 80 million to 120 million, there's other costs in there. This is not the total cost of ownership. It isn't. With speed, and the 2 big ones are security risk. Well, 3: security risk, the disruption of the education in the place where you have to do the new construction and the modifications, and the speed in which this can be done. And I can go into other areas such as traffic. Traffic is a big one. I have a child in the middle school. I've been there, and it's not good. It's not good. And I think with a newer school with a different configuration, we can do a little bit better. So I think you know where I stand on this topic. I just want to make sure when we look at the numbers, because you have numbers in there, and that's good, it is not the total cost of ownership. There's other costs involved with the renovation program. That's all. It'll be a good discussion. I'm very curious to see how the town halls go. And Superintendent Schaefer, thank you for bringing this up. This is a good topic.
Yep. So, Mike, can you go back to the very beginning, to the facility index slide? The slide prior to the legend for the facility index. So above 60% is poor condition, immediate action. So when I look, I like the facility index report. Perhaps I generalized too much from some of those results. So this next question is going to help me determine if I generalize too much or not. So now when you go to the next slide right here. So the middle school was consistently above that 60 marker, and then the interior was much higher at 83%, with 60 being the threshold for immediate action. So my question would be twofold is, what does that score consist of, okay? And if I said, Mike, you got to get that number down to 55%, how would you do that? And I know I'm framing that probably the wrong way to an architect, but this is a superintendent asking an architect.
When you look at, it's a little blurry there, but when we're looking at building interior, it's flooring, walls, interior equipment, ceilings, security, ADA compliance, and building code compliance. Those last three were scored really high, and I think this is the high school, but those are the categories. So for the middle school, walls was like a 4, because you don't have walls. You've got particle board. There is no casework, and there's, especially in the science rooms, there just isn't a lot of equipment there. So when you're looking back at that list for the middle school, let's bring this back down a little bit. You've got that's why the score was that high, and that's why interiors was 83%, meaning it almost was 5s across the board because of those categories. There's ADA compliance was certainly a 5, security is probably a 4 or 5, and building code was probably a 5 as well in those numbers. That's what drove that up. And then, some of those other attributes of, education as well. I mean, flooring is flooring, but, there's a lot of real educational value to some of those other categories. And that's what was really the focus of that. Then you use the poll that you showed about just people's perception. It's a dark space. It's the perception of those rooms being, windowless is just dark. And that's not even on that list of, FCI score. It doesn't really take into account feelings. But, your poll did take into account feelings, and obviously that scored pretty high when it came to, the interior spaces of that. So to try to bring an 83 to a 55, again, in that building, without moving half those kids out, I can't put in walls. And that is a huge part of security. I can't blow up all your bathrooms and redo them because I don't have the room for them, and that's a huge part of the ADA compliance piece, especially that I got to go up to go down to go up to go down. So I would try to add an elevator someplace, but that's going to lose a spot. So all of the challenges that we talked about that before are still challenges, but when you move half the kids to their own addition, well, at least now I've got some space to do it, and that was, again, the whole point of showing that solution tonight. But you can't bring 83 down to 55 or 82 without some major change of, again, moving at least half those kids out and really blowing up that half circle space into something that's vastly different from what it is and perhaps what we shared tonight.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to ask this because I do feel like it's a bit of a dumb question. And, when you take your personal experience and then, apply it outward, and that's generally not evidence-based. But I guess I'm struggling with the disconnect between the numbers because renovating a very old structure often ends up being more costly. And I wonder about the longevity of that. So if we build a new building and, we were presented with a building that kind of focuses on excellence, right? To use the car analogy, like, can we bring down that cost at all? Is it like the Maserati of buildings, right? And then on the flip side with the renovation, I know we talked a little bit about some of the facade of the building, but we also were looking at the foundation.
Paving.
And all of that. Yeah, is the foundation still, again, this is my naivete, can't change light bulbs kind of thing. So, how is the foundation, are we able to structurally renovate that and still have a sustainable building for as long as we'd have a new building? Does that question make sense?
No, you're dealing with an existing 50-year-old building. So we renovated, it looks, I guess we showed tonight, it's great. Half that, well, more than half that building, 2/3 of that building is still 50 years old the day you opened it. Now, the foundations of the building and the structure, the steel, all seem fine. The parts that are falling apart are the masonry veneer, so that's just the bricks falling off. So all of that would be repaired. Again, a lot of that is happening in those stair towers because they didn't put any type of backing or waterproofing or anything in there. So we're taking those away. So we're solving that problem by eliminating the parts that are falling down the most. All of the sidewalks would need to be redone. The paving would need to be redone, so that all that cost is in there. You're right in the sense that the renovation number has a easier way to climb quicker than the new. New buildings, the way to make them cheaper is you build less. So it's cost per square foot, and the bigger it is, the more expensive, the smaller otherwise. When you get into renovation, it gets very specific. We could do this room or not, but across the hall, I just found 3 other things that now I have to do. So the risk of 75 becoming 80, becoming 90 is greater than certainly the new building getting higher. But that would be our duty back to you guys, to be monthly coming back and saying, okay, yep, we think we're on budget, we think we're good, we think we're good, or, oh, wait a second, this just happened, are we still on track? To make sure that we provide that information. But if the renovation scheme was moved ahead, that all of the structural issues, all of the masonry issues and things like that would be repaired as part of that project. Again, that's why that's as expensive as it is, because there's a lot of fixing of the old that we need to do just to keep it up for another 50 years.
But there is a risk involved, because, I mean, I live in a very old house, right? There's a risk involved that you open up a wall and you find something that significantly ups the cost.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that will happen.
Okay.
We'll dive into that building, look at everything that we can find, go, we think we found most, and then there'll be a night where we stand here and go, here's a change order that's not an insignificant number, but here's what happened, but we have numbers set aside for that contingency. Here's why we didn't find it, here's why it's important to fix. I always use Pottsgrove High School. We opened up a wall and found a column hanging from the beam above. It actually didn't touch the foundation the column was supposed to support the roof, not hang from it. So no one saw that until we took a masonry wall down. There was no way to see it. Showed it to the board. We got to fix that. There was $5,000, $6,000, something like that, to put some bracing underneath it and get it down and make it actually become a column again. But again, those numbers were included. We anticipated things like that. You anticipate what you don't see coming, and that we make sure you budget money for that.
Thank you
That's a
for-
good example of, well, you have to fix that. You can't just leave that.
Thank you for letting me ask, like what I said was a relatively naive question, so thanks.
Any other questions from the public? Yes.
Sorry. Just listening to everybody tonight, I do think, I like the idea of maybe restructuring. Like, I think, again, you guys have presented a great thing here, but what we have is the least landlocked building in our district right now. And is there a creative way to maybe think about eliminating not just this building, but another elementary school by creating something on the Newton Ransom side of the property there, where maybe we would have a 4th, 5th, and 6th facility, and then a 6th, 7th, and 8th facility. And does that help us in maybe if we chose the renovation to moving people around? Could solve the Waverly problem, could solve, another problem, and have maybe 2 less buildings in the process. And I'm an employee. I work at South Abington. I think that you might get the most money maybe for main drag, real estate right there. But that's just me. I tend to think that way right off the highway, Chick-fil-A, things like that. But that's all I had to add.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, wasn't wasn't one of the initial options to build a new school that accommodated another grade?
Yeah, so when
So
we
that
looked
would
at,
essentially
and-
do that.
and to Mr. Robinson's points earlier, when we were looking at the middle school, one of my first questions was, well, who goes to the middle school? Is that 6, 7, 8? So if you looked at that new middle school number, and we say, well, let's just make that a 6, 7, 8 school, that's not 25% of that cost. It's maybe 10% of that cost goes away, because you still need all the bigger spaces and things. So a larger building is more economical. So having 4 grades, a 5-8 building, we see that. That's not that foreign. If you made it bigger, say a 4-8 building, and that means now we don't have to do something at another elementary school, okay, well now that's an option. We could look at that long term, but that just made the building even more expensive now. So it's trying to find that sweet spot of where do I move, where do I go, how do we fix this, that, and the other thing. We're working with a district right now that has a 5-6 building that they want to replace. It's very old, falling down. We've looked at every option in the book, every grade realignment there is. The least expensive, most effective thing is to replace the 5-6 building with a 5-6 building, because that's what you need. If you added a grade, you'd still need an addition here, or we'd still have to build something over there, or we'd have to add an addition there. So it's more straightforward. It's not the only option. If you knew you had something, we've talked about South Abington long-term. If you knew you had something that was eminent, okay, maybe you need to look at other options. But this is the most straightforward and therefore cost-effective option of replacing or dealing with the 5-8 building as a 5-8 building. You don't have the capacity to move 5th grade into your elementary schools right now without doing something.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Mrs. Henderson, your hand up.
I think I'm just going to open up a can of worms. I think, and I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room. I think, for us to have all of that land and to be able to build new facilities where we're restructuring grades, I mean, as an educator, I don't know how appropriate it is to have 5th graders in a middle school, but it is what it is. So yeah, I mean, we would love to build this, have this huge campus and have everything that's developmentally appropriate, but it comes down to money. And what I'm hearing is we're coming up with the most economical solution so that we're not spending $120 million on a middle school so that we have money to invest in the other buildings. So when it comes down to it, we're not, as a district, from what I understand, in a great financial position. And I think that's what no one's really saying. We're all kind of dancing around that problem. So I think when we're brainstorming all these ideas, I think Mr. Robeson's saying we could solve the capacity problem at the elementary level by maybe adding 4th grade to the middle school. Well, yeah, then that opens up a lot of classrooms. I mean, we say we don't have the capacity for full-day kindergarten because we physically don't have the space in the elementary buildings. So, but again, it comes down to costs, and I think it's a matter of really throwing it out there. I mean, we are at a really tough spot. I'm not the numbers guy, but from everything that I've understood from being on the board for the last year and a half, I mean, a lot of it comes down to the financial situation that we're in. And it's unfortunate because, there's a lot more possibilities, obviously, with the more money that you have. So I think that's the tough spot that we're in. So I just don't want that, to get overlooked.
Well, that's similar to every district. I mean, there's the ideal solution of this would be perfect. We build a 6-8 middle, a big K-5 right next to it. Newton Ramsden becomes the district office. Great. Well, now you're building 2 schools. That would be great, but that's where, is 120 achievable? Is 200 achievable? At some point, it does come down. Everything always comes down to money. I mean, that's all of us do with that. So as long as we feel that we're doing things that are safe and academically appropriate, one of the challenges of the 5-8 right now is everybody's on top of one another. So that's the goal, whether it's new or the renovated scheme, of having the elementary wing and a middle school wing, so that we could have some physical separation. Because I agree with you, and we've heard that a lot from other groups about, a 5th and 8th graders together. We can show you a school we did in Easton at Wilson area that's built like a T. So there's the common space in the middle, there's a 5-6 wing, and a 7-8 wing. The 7-8 wing has lockers in the corridors and science labs. The 5-6 wing has, cubbies in the classrooms and tag boards. So, because they were dealing with that same concern as well. I don't want my little 10-year-old going with scary 15-year-olds. Not to say you can't do it, and you just want to be sensitive about that design. Again, there's options, but to your point, the other options are more building, and more building is just more.
Thank you. I mean, your drawings look great, so I was impressed with the presentation. I mean, I think you did a great job with what you had, so now it's just a matter of figuring out the next steps, I guess.
You guys have the harder job of having to choose the direction. We just make pretty
You have
pictures.
the fun job.
Yeah, exactly.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes, you're right, it does come down to money. But if, what Phil had said earlier, if we don't address our issues, we could be spending millions and millions of dollars and still have our elementary buildings without classroom size. And then spending millions and millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and still not offering an all-day kindergarten. It is hard for me to think that we would be putting in a brand-new middle school building with not addressing those issues. Safety is huge. The traffic issue at the middle school is huge. We have to come up with ways that we can find ways to solve our district problems. And all of our elementary buildings right now are struggling with extra classroom size. So I'm not in favor of a new middle school building without it being housing at least 4th grade, or maybe a elementary building addition on Newton Ransom for 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then 7th and 8th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th at the middle school. But making sure with this huge expense that we have classroom sizes for all K through 4. And I think that's something that we all have to address before we even think about the financial part of this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anything else about, yes, we have someone else in the front.
Hi, my husband and I came from a district that did something like this, and what they did is they combined a lot of they got rid of all the old elementary schools, made a brand new K1, 2, 3, or K1, 2, then had an intermediate 3, 4, 5, and then did the high school, and then finally are getting to middle school now. So they had this big order of operations of how they did it, but by starting with brand new, with the K1, 2, it like opened up space from all the other places, and they sold all the land from the older buildings. So there was a lot of revenue that came in through that as well, like the gentleman said over there. So I think not just looking at this number, this huge number of $120 million, $120 million, the order of operation and what revenue can be made from selling is really important in deciding what's best. Because going from that district that had all brand new to what we have now is, I'm so sad that we moved. Seeing what I left I moved during COVID, so I didn't get to see the school before I came in, and I was very disheartened to see what it's a great school district, and then that's the middle school, so it is pretty bad. So that's why it's a great presentation. It's amazing what you can come up with, but it's still a lot of things to deal with. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Kelly, thank you very much for the outstanding job. Oh, yes, it did. I will speak less. Okay, our next order of business is finances and treasury, and Mr. Benensky, will you go through the treasurer's report for the month, please?
Yeah, July, we started with $13,197,717. We only had monthly revenues of $263,811 and gave us a total monthly revenue of $13,197,717. total cash available of $13,461,529. Our net disbursements were $3,112,766, which gives us a cash balance of $10,348,763.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Benensky, as usual. Forgot.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mrs. Robeson?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson, sorry. Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you very much.
Miss-
Dr. Schaefer, can we have the personnel report?
Yes, Mr. Ackert asked the board to consider a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, the next is informational, informational things, use of the facilities, and I don't see any. Is there any unfinished business? New business, I want to thank everyone for your comments. I think it's exactly what we need to, as we go through this process, and I think you can be sure this board's going to look at all possibilities and all options. That's what we have to do to find our way through this. Thank you all. With that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all very much.
What I was told, so I went out and kind of, just talked to, I think it was Dave O'Neill, and he brought one of his guys, the township manager, and one of his guys. And they were like, guys, we want to pave the road, but we're not going to do it because your runoff, right? But, it's preventing us from doing it, because like, why am I going to, so we kind of had those discussions. So they made it seem like